16 children found in what officials describe as third world conditions, a term some find offensive, but investigators say applies to this house. Some of the children reportedly unable to speak. Others had to be sent to the hospital, at least one in very serious condition. People in the village of Hamden in Vinton County tell us they're in shock, and family members say they had no idea what was going on. Thank you for joining us for this special look at the child abuse case in Vinton County. We're going to have in-depth coverage for you in the next half hour or so. I'm Colleen Marshall. We're going to take you inside our coverage in Vinton County, not just our interviews, our discussions with some of the investigators in this case, but also with some of the people who live in Vinton County who were unaware of what was happening in that house. You're even going to hear from a family member, the son-in-law of the elder suspects in this case. We have an exclusive conversation with him. I'm going to be joined by Isabel Cleary, the NBC4 investigative reporter, and digital reporter Katie Millard. We want you to know where things stand as of today, July 6, 2026. And we're also going to walk you through what has happened up until this point, beginning with a look at the timeline. Officials served a warrant on the house on Omer Street in Hamden, Ohio, on the morning of Tuesday, June 30th. At this point, we still don't know what the original warrant was for in that case. We're going to have more information in a few minutes about criminal charges now pending against one of the four suspects. Inside the house, though, officials say they found 16 children confined to a 12 by 12 room in what they described as deplorable conditions. Some of those children did have to be hospitalized. Investigators described them as feral, saying some of them were unable to communicate. 4 adults on the property were arrested and charged with 16 counts of felony child endangerment. Gary Siders Jr. and his wife, Elizabeth Siders, and Gary Siders Sr. and his wife, Christine Lynn Siders. Siders Jr. is also facing multiple charges of indecent exposure. All of them, all 4 suspects, have pleaded not guilty. Now, we were able to talk with another family member. His name is Ronnie Fletcher. He tells us he's married to the sister of Gary Siders Jr., the daughter of the elder Siders in this case. He says the extended family first learned about the conditions in the house when the rest of us learned about it, after that news conference, after this story broke. He tells us what was going on inside that house should not reflect on the rest of the family.
My wife would take the last $5 out of her pocket and buy somebody a meal, and chance running out of gas to get home. If we didn't know this was that way, we would have helped. I mean, they're breaking down good people and taking off of their kids' plates. It ain't right.
After the break, you'll hear more from him about the people who are spreading misinformation, and there's a lot of it online. And I'm going to be joined by our digital reporter, Katie Millard, and investigative reporter, Isabel Cleary. They've been working on this case since day one, and you'll want to hear what they have to say about where the investigation stands and where it's likely to go. Welcome back, everyone. I'm joined now by our NBC4i.com digital reporter, Katie Millard, and the NBC4 investigative reporter, Isabel Cleary. We're going to take a deeper dive into some of what they have found out about this case. First, though, I want you to hear again from Andy Wilson, the Attorney General for the state of Ohio, because some of his comments are relative to the reaction we've been getting.
What we saw down here today is pure evil. It really looked third world. It's the type of thing that we're not used to seeing here in America.
Well, when you have the Attorney General of the state of Ohio calling this an evil situation, it didn't take long for people to react. Not just the people in Vinton County, but really all over the state, all over the country. And Isabel, you've been following some of that on social media. And as disturbing as this is, you've uncovered even more disturbing information.
That's correct. And if we're going to talk about social media, we do want to say briefly that this has gotten a ton of attention across social media platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. And there are images and videos being shared that are not part of this case. So we want to ask you to just kind of really take precaution when you're looking at these things, because there's AI out there, there's photos from other cases, and I actually spoke with a former FBI special agent who said that this really can actually end up re-victimizing the victims in the case.
Yeah, and you showed me some of these images that are, when you say they're not part of the case, they're just not true. They're made up, right? There were images of children being held in chains in a room. None of that's true, right?
The law enforcement in this case have not released body camera footage, or in this situation, if that was ever released, minors' faces would be blurred, but they have not released anything like that. And for that to be part of the speculation, the former FBI agent I spoke with, it can actually, hurt the case. Investigators are focused on finding, what is real, what is accurate, and how they can uncover what actually happened. And this is just drawing national attention to something that really isn't part of the case, when really the concern should be around protecting the victims.
And Katie, you have seen in your experience, haven't you, how something like this trends. And as disturbing as these images are, people almost want to believe them, don't they?
They absolutely do. And something I'm seeing that's really interesting is that things keep getting shared on social media to the point that they almost become fact when they're not true at all. We were able to obtain about 6 birth certificates for some of these children who we, of course, are not going to name.
Children born in a hospital to a very young mother. She's only in her early 30s now. The oldest child we know is 18. So it's not surprising, is it? And I'll ask both of you this. It's not surprising that people start filling in the blanks with their own information when we're having so much trouble getting factual information at this point because they're not releasing it yet. It's not surprising that people want to know the full story behind all of this, right?
I actually had the chance to speak with Gary Sr.'s attorney, and he said the state has been pretty limited with the information they're sharing. He wanted to caution people, if he doesn't know it about his client, it's pretty hard to believe that it might be true or false. He just doesn't know.
His name is Dorian Baum. We actually have a soundbite from him that we would like people to hear right now, because his contention was all of the information that came out actually in the news conference, when these people are being called evil, when they're being compared to a third world country, which some people find very disturbing, when they're being called, basically compared to raising these children in the worst possible horrific conditions, and that's out there from the investigators. He says this can affect the case. Let's hear what he had to say about that.
All those statements that were made by law enforcement, all those statements that were made by the state apparatus, that is the very definition of hearsay. They may want to try to win this in the court of public opinion, but that's not where this case will actually be tried. It'll be tried at a court of law.
So I can tell you from a legal perspective, there's always a concern about what information is going to be out in the public. This will eventually be heard by a jury. So, Isabel, I know you've been looking into the conditions in the house. You were down there near the house. As limited as the information is, what have you learned?
So, of course, we cannot see inside the home. The photos we've seen have been kind of through doors, through windows. But we were able to get property records for this house. We were able to see, how big the rooms were, where the kids were maybe kept, because we did hear that the 16 children were found in a 12 by 12 foot room. So there's a room in the back of the house that we believe they could have been kept because that most accurately describes the conditions, or potentially in the basement if there was another wall put in. But again, there's no construction records for this. That doesn't mean they didn't necessarily do it themselves, but we do know it was an old house. We also were able to learn that the home had running water and the sewer and trash service was active as well. The bills were tied to Christina Siders, which is the 66-year-old, the older woman suspect, and we knew that they were being paid, as well as with the house, the property taxes were being paid as well. We don't know specifically who was paying them, but the house itself was in the name of a trustee.
And you don't know, we don't know the source of income for this family. We don't know, do we, how these bills were being paid, but you learned, did you not, that they've been here at least 4 years in the house?
Yes, investigators did confirm that, and the property records showed that the bills were up to date. The last one being a little over, $900, and it was up to date and paid, so they wouldn't have, people allege that water was shut off, things like that, but we were able to confirm water was running.
Now, so we know they had a landlord. You wonder, was anybody checking on this house? And Katie, you also have to wonder, that many children, was anybody seeing if these children were getting any kind of an education? Even if you homeschool, you have to have lesson plans and testing turned over to the state. Is there any record of any kind of education or state contact with these children?
So our sister station, WOWK, was able to have an in-depth interview today with a man named Ronnie Fletcher. Now, he is married to Gary Jr.'s sister. So he is very familiar with the family. And he said under his interpretation, they were just being homeschooled. The state has been slow to come out with records, the county as well, about these CPS checks, about the information that they're willing to divulge about who was coming to the home and who was checking on what. But the brother-in-law, who, again, our sister station spoke with, said he had not known a direct address for this family for more than 7 years. And as to those bills, he said the only time they were really in contact was when they would call and ask, can you help with the water bill? And of course, he said that they were helping because had they known, he says they would have helped in any way possible. He just says they didn't know.
And you got to wonder, how do you not know? And not to say anything against him, but this is such an odd situation. I think it's time we should hear from him. Here's what he had to say when he talked to someone at one of our sister stations. Again, this is the brother-in-law of Gary and the son-in-law of the older Siders. Here he is.
Quit making stuff up that ain't true. Quit harassing people that had no idea. We can't hardly have our phones on because everybody's calling us, and it's not right. They are stopping good citizens that are related to these people from taking care of their kids. So at this point, I feel they're in as much wrong as these people are.
One of the incredible parts of this story is the apparent nature of the size and makeup of this family. We know there were 16 children in a very confined area. And Katie, you say those aren't the only births for the young woman and Gary Siders Jr. in this family, were they?
No, they were not. So we were able to obtain birth and death certificates for 2 young twin girls who were born and died tragically on November 20th, 2022. Now, they were born right next door to where we're filming this right now at Riverside, and there was no indication that any sort of abuse led to this. I cannot stress this enough. The death certificates say it was natural. These children were born 24 weeks in, conjoined. That is just sadly not a situation that a lot of children can survive.
Right. And they, again, the multiple births in a short amount of time. We don't know the physical condition as well of the mother. She is in custody. But you have been looking, Isabel, into how this all came about. And also there are criminal charges in an unrelated case pending against Gary Siders Jr. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so Colleen, we know the day of that search warrant was part of an investigation involving allegations of domestic abuse and child neglect fact, separate from the case that really has caught national attention. But Gary Siders Jr. actually has different charges he's facing, and that is for indecent exposure at the home you're seeing now. And it's on 4 separate dates in May, May 23rd, 27th, 29th, and 31st. And again, that was just at his home address.
When you say indecent exposure, was it to family members or is this to someone in the general public?
We are learning more about that. We believe it's the general public, and we have asked for more information and are waiting on that.
And I know we're going to be carefully covering these court cases as well. And I emphasize the question I'm about to ask is speculative. But in cases like this, not that there are that many cases like this, but in a case when there are suspicions of child abuse or any kind of domestic abuse, there are very often mental health examinations of the people involved. I know we've heard from the attorney from Gary Siders Sr. We don't know yet, do we, if the other attorneys who will be representing all 4 people in this case, if they're going to ask for those kinds of examinations. Do we expect that to happen? Have either of you had any indication of that?
The brother-in-law did discuss a little bit about some possible mental health issues in the home. He said it was autism or something. I don't want to be specific because he was not even specific, but about Gary Jr. And he also was able to confirm for us that Gary Sr. had a stroke not that long ago. So we don't have a time frame on that, but we do know that that affected him cognitively. The brother-in-law suspects, again, this is not from investigators, this is from a family member who was not that active in the home, did not know this was going on, he says, but he believes that once that stroke happened, that's sort of when the abuse really spiraled because he had received a photo of some of the children from about 6 months ago and they did not look to be in the conditions that were described by investigators.
Yeah, and I know, Isabel, you have talked to investigators, and we could tell from the tone and the nature of the initial news conference that they found this situation to be very disturbing, didn't they? And were stunned at the number of children who were there. Were they shocked by all of this?
They were. The way they described the home is just, they were in shock describing it, and they did not expect to come upon 16 children. They were there, serving that search warrant, which we are trying to learn more information about. But again, they said they didn't know the 16 children would be there, and that's what kind of sparked this larger investigation.
Let's listen to what the Vinton County Sheriff Ryan Kane had to say about all of this.
Our mission is to protect our citizens and our children. The scene is horrific, and these are horrific allegations. We will do anything in our power to hold those accountable to justice.
Clearly, the sheriff, the other investigators have found this to be so troubling. Isabel, what about the people who live there? The neighbors, some of them, do they tell you they had any awareness of how many children were in that house?
We are told they did not really see the children outside. They did not know about this situation. We plan to continue speaking with neighbors and see if they will share anything else with us. But when I was at that house before, there's a lot of interest, whether it's just people in the area, people driving from outside the area, people will drive by and take photos of the house. So we do know people are very interested, but we are working to confirm facts. We are not going to tell you speculations. We are not going to share some of the fake images you might be seeing. So we are working to speak with the neighbors, speak with the authorities to make sure we are bringing you the most accurate, up-to-date information.
And Katie, this goes back to, again, those unfounded and really unfortunate images that are going out over the internet, all the social media posts. I know you follow that very carefully. Have you ever seen anything quite like this?
The social media aspect is always fanatic in a case like this, but this is truly something I have not seen a lot of the same level of. People are coming up with all sorts of things that seem to just not be rooted in fact. I'm sure a lot of them are rooted in care for this case and want for the best of these children. But for example, I'm seeing all of these rumors about TikTok pages that some of these kids allegedly had where they're writing all these paragraphs. We know from investigators that the children were largely illiterate. The eldest of them cannot write her name. So it is highly unlikely that those are actually TikTok accounts by those children. Just a simple example where the facts don't always align with the rumors that are speculating so wildly on Facebook.
Well, the two of you, just like the investigators, have to sort through a lot of misinformation to try to get factual coverage of this really sad, horrific case. I thank both of you for sitting in, explaining. We're going to be talking to you, I'm sure, in the future about what you are uncovering in this case. Isabel, I know you've been down there and will be there again. And we're going to come back and take a look at what might be the next steps in this Vinton County case. Stay with us. Welcome back. Well, we want you to know what comes next. All four of these suspects in the Siders family are scheduled to be in court on Tuesday, July 7th, for a hearing at 1 p.m. At some point, all of these charges will have to be turned over to a grand jury for a more formal indictment. And of course, we'll be covering that when it happens. We've heard so far from only one of the attorneys representing the Siders. We might get more information as this court case proceeds and that hearing gets underway. Of course, we're going to be following all of it. NBC4 is your place for accurate coverage, not just of this story, but all of the breaking news that makes a difference for you and our community. We thank you for being with us for this special report. You can continue to follow this case as we will follow it on air, online, and on our NBC4 Columbus streaming app. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for watching. For more NBC4, download the NBC4 streaming app. You'll get free 24/7 local programming streamed straight to your living room. Just search NBC4 Columbus on your Apple TV, Amazon Fire, Roku, or Samsung device.